and welcome to Edge to Edge Quilting with your embroidery machine, hosted by Dime and Oh My Crafty Supplies. You know, this is a great class because you're going to learn so much about how to do this technique that mimics the look of long arm quilting. You're going to learn what kind of designs are suitable, how to select them or even create them, and how to land them perfectly where they need to be to create that edge to edge effect. And we're going to show you how you can hoop that quilt sandwich easier than ever, and also how you can manage the bulk of that quilt on your embroidery machine. And not least of all, we're going to show you how you can plan your entire quilt without doing any quilt math. So this is a great class with a lot to offer. If you've been wanting to try the edge to edge technique, we have a great educator with us today. In fact, it's our lead educator at Dime, and that is Ashley Jones. Ashley, I love the way that you break this process down so that anyone with an embroidery capable embroidery machine can do this technique.
Yeah, absolutely. We try to make it as simple as possible. For one, well, we want everyone's hobby to be enjoyable, of course, but when people think of quilting with their embroidery machine, they think of how large the quilt is. So it seems a little intimidating, but really you're only focused on what's in the hoop, which is much more manageable. And then we just have to reposition. So it's actually not as hard as it seems. And we'll make sure they have all the details.
Well, that's great. And, you know, in case someone thinks that the information is a little something they want to review, they can watch for the next 48 hours on the same link that brought them to this broadcast, and you can see and what you might have missed and get those fine points down. Right, Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it takes a couple of times just for, to get it to sink in, I think, too, especially if it's a new task. Some of us need to watch it a few times just to make sure that we understand the process, which no harm done. Like you said, you can rewatch for the next 48 hours at no charge.
Exactly. And, that's one of the great things about this class is that it's free, it's rewatchable, and there's those great event prices that I know you're going to show us more about here in just a minute. So I'm going to get out of your way and jump over to the chat. And everyone in the chat should ask their questions that they need answered about any of the information that you see in this event, and we'll get your questions answered. So ask in the chat, and Ashley, I'm going to let you take over.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, Deborah. So Deborah and I will get together and answer some of your questions live. So like she said, ask in the chat if you've got any questions. But welcome to our Edge to Edge Quilting with Your Embroidery Machine event. Excuse me. This event is all of the details to get your quilt tops quilted. And we're talking about, guys, quilting through those 3 layers so that it looks like this was done on a long arm, but really you're doing this with your embroidery machine. So if you're not familiar with the process of edge to edge, it's really about connecting embroidery design. So that's what we're talking about today, to make it look like one continuous design. So we need to connect those designs point to point so that our quilts get quilted and it just looks like it was done on a long arm. So that's our goal. Now, this method of quilting can be used for pretty much anything that you need quilted fabric for. So we're talking, of course, your quilt tops. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But sometimes we can use quilted fabric for other things. So throw pillows. We sometimes use our quilted fabric to make other items like bags. Even like this item here, our tree skirt. And in fact, these are great places to start. If you start smaller, it gives you the ability to practice your connecting technique, but then you have a really nice finished project in a short amount of time. So table runners, that's another great place to start. And of course, we always need table runners for every holiday and every season. So that's a great place. And then also this casserole carrier. So we're headed just straight into potluck season. I feel like with the holidays approaching, and so I'm always taking a dish to someone else's house during the holidays. So my casserole carrier is a lot of use. Now, this quilted casserole carrier was done on my embroidery machine, so I'll show you the details of that. But I will tell you that when we're done today, you guys are going to have all the details to get all of your quilt tops finished, whether it's large projects or small projects. So let me start by showing you some inspiration of some of the things that I've created will maybe give you an idea of where to start. So on my casserole carrier here that was in the image, I wanted to share with you what it looks like on the inside. So when we quilt, we're generally quilting from the pretty side, so the top side of our quilt. And a lot of times I get questions about, oh, what does the back look like? Is it really nice enough to quilt on our embroidery machines? Does the back look good? And it really does. If you take a look at the quilting here, this was done, this center section here is actually done in 6 different hoopings. And you can see that it just looks like it's all one hooping. And then I did separate hoopings for the little tabs here. But look at the back. I mean, it looks just as good as the front. The reasoning has to do with the type of design. So when we are stitching with our embroidery machines, a lot of times we have satin stitches or fill stitches. But when we're quilting, we're using an embroidery file, but it is just a run stitch file. So it looks the same on the back as it does on the front. Now here's another item here. And this one, if you want a quick project and want to practice your connecting technique, try it on either placemats or something like this. This is a drawing mat that I created. It's a 14 by 14 square. And so I don't have a hoop that's 14 inches wide. So I had to do 2 hoopings to get this quilted. And I was able to practice my connection technique to make sure that it looks like all one design. So do something small. So placemats, drawing mats, things like that. A center square for your table. You can practice the connecting, but you're only doing a couple of hoopings, and so it gives you the opportunity to have a nice finished project. Just like our table runners, another really great item to stitch with. And so here, this holiday table runner, as you could see, was done on my embroidery machine, and I even used metallic thread on this one. I really wanted the design to show nicely. I wanted that little bit of shimmer. I know it's hard to see metallic thread when it's just a run stitch, but this is our King Star metallic thread that I used for this quilting. It stitches beautifully. It stitches just like my regular embroidery thread. I don't have to worry about the excess breaking. I don't have to put it far away. Use my regular embroidery needle, and it stitches great. So for quilting, it's perfect. The holiday season coming, adding that little bit of shimmer to not just your quilting, but also your regular embroidery. You could use it for that as well. But on the back, you can see I've got that same gold stitching. I wound a bobbin with this King Star metallic for my stitching on the back there. So you can stitch your quilt in any kind of thread you can run in your embroidery machine. So that metallic thread is a perfect example. Now this example here, I want to share with you a tip, and the reason why busy printed fabrics on the back is really helpful. So first of all, I love to use my scraps from the quilt in big chunks and make my backing fabric. I love that patchwork look, but also these busy printed fabrics really do conceal if I have any tie-off stitches that maybe I didn't trim close or that are visible. So a busy printed fabric really will conceal anything going on in the back that you don't want anyone to see. Now we will have that tie-off stitch. You'll trim it close so you won't see it, but it may bug you still, but this is really a way to camouflage those stitches. But we're going to talk about a little bit later. You can pull up your bobbin thread if you'd like, and that will reduce that knot on the back. And so that's also an option. So I'll share that a little more about that with you a little bit later. So now this video here, this is Eileen stitching the quilt you see her holding on her embroidery machine. So a couple of things I want to point out. This is a condensed version of the entire process, but it gives you a really good idea of what to expect. And notice she has all that extra batting around the edge. That's very important. to make sure when you get to the edge, your hoop has something to grab onto. So now she's using the weightless quilter, which is our quilt management quilt frame here, and you'll see how it works. But notice she has the base of her Snap Hoop Monster already on her embroidery machine, and her quilt is basted. You do want to baste your quilt, make sure all your layers will be held together nicely. And so now she's going to attach it to the weightless quilter and slip it over that metal frame and underneath the needle there, and just place the magnetic top frame into place. So now when you're quilting with your embroidery machine, you can only quilt what is in the hoop, which is still way better than, for me, doing free motion anyway. And so you're going to need to move the quilt around. You can see how she just lifts the top frame of the hoop and places it right back down when she advances the quilt. So we love using our Snap Hoop Monster for this process. You can quilt with your regular standard hoop, but the Snap Hoop Monster makes it really easy and you don't have to leave your machine. So that is something that we really like. We like to be able to reposition and not have to take the quilt off of the embroidery machine. So now she's on the last position there and almost finished with that last design. And you can see the weightless quilter there, that frame supporting the quilt while she's stitching. Now it's tying that last knot, so she's getting pretty excited, which she should be, because look at that. Just gorgeous, all quilted on your embroidery machine. So really simple process, especially when you break it all down. So that's what we're going to be doing. So now to quilt on your embroidery machine, you do need a quilt sandwich. So you most likely have a quilt top that you've already pieced, or you can certainly make one or do a whole cloth quilt. You'll need your embroidery machine and your hoop, but you also need an embroidery design, and we've got you covered on that design. So as a thank you, we are giving you this free embroidery design for your quilting. It's the same design Eileen used on that cute little nautical quilt there. And let me show you how to get this design. So for the event today, you guys will be watching in this window. And while you're watching, just be careful not to click on those logos. That'll actually take you away from the presentation, and that is not where the action is happening. So to get back to the previous slide, make sure, or the previous screen, make sure to click that previous tab. Now to the right of the video is our chat area. So if you haven't already, tell us where you're watching from. If you have any questions, that's the place to ask them. So now for the event, this is a shop and learn event. So you do have special pricing on all of your products. So click that view product button to see more details, and then you can click to add any of these items to your cart. So again, to see more details about any of these items that we'll be talking about, click that view product button, and then you'll be able to see additional details and add these items to cart if it looks like something that would be helpful for you. Now I'm going to be talking about these products and how they're going to help you with your edge-to-edge quilting. Now, of course, these are things just to help make it easier. Now, click that next page button in order to go get your free design. It'll load additional product, and then when you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see your free design. So make sure you click the view product and add that item to your cart. And once you are done with your shopping, you're going to click that checkout button there in the bottom right. And then you'll see an additional page pop up. So this is very important. You want to make sure you click this show order summary. That is going to show you what's in your cart, but also give you the place to enter your free ship code. Your free ship code to get free shipping to any US address is hot, hot. So make sure you type hot, hot with no spaces. Once you've entered that information, click the continue to shipping to complete the process, and your stuff will be on its way. Okay, so the first thing I want to share with you is the crisscross cheater quilt. Now, the quilt that Eileen was quilting in the video that you just saw was this cheater quilt, and she had added a cute little anchor and border. So a cheater quilt is a printed panel that looks like quilt blocks. So this particular panel is a 70 by 51.5. So it's a nice lap size panel. It does come with its own quilting designs, but of course you've got your nautical design that you can use for quilting on your embroidery machine as well. So this is a great way, guys, to practice your edge-to-edge quilting. You don't have to wait for your quilt top to be pieced, or you don't have to practice on that pieced quilt top. You can practice on this printed panel until you get your technique perfect. So the crisscross cheater quilt is one of those items we have on special, and all of those specials are below the presentation. You can scroll down and add those to your cart. So now the next thing I want to share with you is about the hooping process. So when you are quilting with your embroidery machine, you do have to reposition your hoop. We can only quilt what is in the hoop. So we use our snap hoop monster for this process, and that's what I will be showing you. So now I've got this little quilted wall hanging here. It's 30 inches wide, which is definitely too wide for my hoop, although I wish I had a hoop that was 30 inches wide. So I do have to reposition my hoop to get this entire wall hanging quilted. So I'm going to be showing with our snap hoop monster. Now you can certainly quilt with your standard hoops, but this is much easier, believe me. So if you haven't used our snap hoop monster, it actually comes in 3 separate pieces here. The top part is the magnet. The bottom here is the metal that the magnet attaches to when your quilt sandwich is in between. And it actually does attach to your embroidery machine the same exact way that your standard hoops do. So your machine does recognize it. So now the shield here separates the 2 pieces, and it's also great for transporting your hoop to the machine. Now, when we're quilting, we want to do our setup at the embroidery machine. So I'm going to separate my 3 pieces, set my top part aside. I would attach this to my embroidery machine, and then take my quilt sandwich and position that over my hoop and under the needle. Once I've got my quilt sandwich in position, and you do want to start as close to the center as possible, you'll take that magnetic top frame and line it up with the metal base and drop that into position. So now we're ready to quilt this area that's in the hoop. Once you load your quilting design and quilt this area and you're ready to move on to the next location, you'll lift that magnetic top frame. You can place this over the head of the machine if it's large enough, and then advance to the next location, and then just place your top frame right back in place. Okay, so it's really that simple to reposition your hoop. Now I know you guys are probably already thinking, oh, well, yeah, rehooping, but I got to line up those designs. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about lining up those designs in a bit. Now the hoop guard is an additional attachment for the snap hoop monster. It is a separate purchase, but man, is it a lifesaver. It actually creates a barrier to prevent your quilt sandwich from falling into the sewing field. So it is definitely worth the $17 to prevent a mishap from happening. So that's using the snap hoop with the hoop guard. So now let me remove this and let's talk about one additional hoop. So we have a snap hoop monster for multi-needle embroidery machines. So we're talking about those embroidery machines that are brother and baby lock and have a multiple needles. So the multi-needles, 6, 10, but also the tubular machines that are single needles that like the Alliance and the Persona. So we do make hoops for those as well. And I know this is a lesser known snap hoop for dime, so I wanted to share that with you. And you can see it attaches the same exact way that your standard hoops do, so the machine will recognize the size of this hoop. So now I'm going to separate the pieces just like we did before, and you would attach this to your embroidery machine. And once it is attached, place your quilt sandwich over top, and then you are going to use your magnetic top frame, the same exact process. Drop that into place and you are ready to quilt this section that is in the hoop. Okay, so once you're done quilting here, you would then reposition to the next spot. So notice this hoop's a little bit larger, so I can quilt more of my quilt sandwich in one hooping. So the larger the hoop for your sewing machine, it's definitely going to give you more surface area quilted at once and less hoopings. So that is the snap hoop monster with the hoop guard. So now, if you are already a snap hoop monster, tell us in the chat. I would love to hear if we already have some users out there that love their snap hoops. So if you are new to snap hoops and you want to take advantage of the special pricing today, you are going to locate first the brand of your embroidery machine. And then when you click that view product button, it will give you the ability to choose from a drop down list. So that drop down has all of the different sizes for that machine brand. So choose the size you're interested in. Make sure your brand is, or model, sorry, is listed out beside. If you have any questions, of course, you could ask in the chat. Deborah's over there answering questions, but if she, for some reason doesn't get to you, make sure you re-ask, because I know those chat questions go by quickly. But you can also look at our compatibility chart. So the machine compatibility chart is below the drop-down list for your hoop sizes. And when you click that, you'll be taken to a page where it'll allow you to choose your model. And then it'll tell you all the hoops that'll work for that. So that's another way that you can get the answers that you needed. So now here's the hoop guard in this image. So this is a nice image of the hoop guard in action on the embroidery machine, what it looks like. It's going to prevent that quilt sandwich from being able to fold into the sewing field. So I love that. So it's like called like, that'd be like stitch insurance, right? But you can use the hoop guard and the snap hoop monster, as you can see here, for other embroidery items. So the snap hoop is great for all your embroidery needs, and the hoop guard can prevent any item from falling into the sewing field if it is nested around your hoop or rolled into the throat of the machine. So that is the hoop guard for your snap hoop monster. It's $17.99 and available below. Now, in today's event, we have some special design collections for you guys from Amelie Scott Designs. So if you are familiar with Edge to Edge at all, you probably are familiar with her design collections, and she's given us some bundles to share with you at special pricing. So here is a special message from Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Connor, owner of Amelie Scott Designs and the author of Edge to Edge Quilting on Your Embroidery Machine. I'm also the digitizer for our embroidery and quilting designs. I am thrilled to be working with Dime. Like us, they have great products and tools that make quilting on your embroidery machine fun and easy. They are very inventive at solving problems. I know I have been using their Perfect Embroidery Pro software for years, and I recently started using my quilt planner. I can tell you right now, I love it. I'm also totally hooked on their Snap Hoop Monster magnetic hoops. They make hooping a breeze. They also have a product called the Weightless Quilter that I like to use too. It's like having a bunch of hands helping you when you're supporting the weight of a quilt when you're quilting on your embroidery machine. You guys are going to have so much fun today. In this class, you will get to see firsthand how these products and techniques will make it easy for you to finish your quilt tops. I think at the end of the day, you'll be excited and inspired and ready to start quilting. So have fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine, for that message. And I love how she talks about the weightless quilter is like having extra hands support your quilt, because that's exactly what it does. So the quilting with your embroidery machine process is moving our hoop around, getting our quilt tops quilted, but our quilts are heavy and huge sometimes. They hang down in front of our machine and our table, like you see here, and behind. And that weight of the quilt can cause your inner ring to pop out. It also can cause pulling against your needle, which will make your stitches not formed properly. So you really want to manage the weight of the quilt. So that's what we use the weightless quilter for. Now, this is an item that's great for any of your quilts that are lap size and larger. Anything smaller, it's probably much easier to manage the weight. So the weightless quilter is a frame that sits on the floor and holds your quilt. You can see that pole flexing in the front there. That's part of the weightless quilter. It's allowing the machine to move freely, but still supporting the quilt. So the weightless quilter actually sits on the floor underneath your table, and it works with any table that you already own. It consists of floor bars and corner brackets. Now, the corner brackets hold those flexible poles. It does come with long and short poles. to accommodate a couple of different table heights. And this is what it looks like underneath your table. It doesn't bolt to the floor in any way. It just sits on the floor. Now you will clamp your quilt to it using those large corner clamps. And this is what it'll look like when it's all set up and you're ready to start your quilting. So here you can see that the quilt is not being able to fall down behind the table because it's supported by the weightless quilter to reduce the quilt drag. So now with the table that you already have in your sewing room, you can use the weightless quilter around a small table like you see here. We've got it around that outside corner. And notice we only have 2 floor bars. It comes with 4, but I rarely use all 4. A lot of times I have it set up like this with just the 2 and sometimes maybe 3. With a larger table, you might want to move it underneath the table to get it closer to your embroidery machine to make sure it's supporting exactly where it needs to. If you're working on a sewing cabinet, you can still use the weightless quilter around that outside corner. If you have at least an inch of clearance under your sewing cabinet, you can place it on the floor underneath as well. Now, do we have any free motion quilters out there? You can use the weightless quilter with your sit-down quilter or with your sewing machine to help you with the free motion quilting as well. So here are some images of the setup for the weightless quilter. And so here you can see that we're in the center of the quilt. We have a large amount rolled into the throat of the machine, and that left pole is flexing to allow us access to the center of the quilt there. But as we extend and work our way out to the right side, you can see that flexible pole is extended out and supporting the quilt, not allowing it to fall underneath. Also, small spaces. If you are concerned about it fitting in your area, you can see here with the weightless quilter how close we are to the window and the wall behind the machine, and it's still doing its job. Even as we work our way to the bottom corner there, the quilt is not being allowed to fall behind the table. Now, you can also use the weightless quilter. We talked about free motion already, but what about binding? Anytime you are working with a large amount of fabric, and in this case, you can see how we only have 2 of the poles clamped to the quilt because we usually are working with the edge when we're adding our binding. So this is an easy way to put on your binding and not have to wrestle with your quilt. Now, free motion quilting, take a look at this little video. So free motion with the weightless quilter really takes the strain off of your shoulders and hands when you're moving the quilt or working the quilt for your free motion design that you're creating. So here it is one more time. Take a look at that front pole both of those poles actually on the left just swaying as we're moving the quilt around. So that's the weightless quilter, and that is available also below the presentation. It's normally $400, but it's $269.99 for this presentation. So the weightless quilter is going to help you manage the weight of your quilt and reduce your quilt drag. So this product, guys, is great for lap size and larger. If you're doing quilting edge to edge with smaller items, most likely you'll be able to manage that without the weightless quilter. So now the next section that we're going to be talking about is all about the designs that you'll be using. So I'm going to talk about different types of quilting designs for edge-to-edge quilting, but also how to get those lined up perfectly and how do I see how many hoopings it's going to take to get my exact quilt top done. And then we're going to do the design layout. So you'll see all that in the next section coming up, so stay tuned for that. But before we get to that, let's see if we have any questions or comments. So Deborah, anything that we want to talk about?
Well, yes, Ashley, and you would not believe how many people, dozens, are saying they love their snap hoop monsters. In fact, a couple of people just got their snap hoop monsters, but are already loving them. And Janet says that she loves her weightless quilter and her 9.5 by 14 snap hoop for edge quilting. So, you know, these tools really go a long way toward making that much easier. And Denise says, I love using the snap hoop on my baby lock, was easy to figure out. So now here is a question about 3 people asked, okay, Ashley, and I did answer it in the chat, but I'd like you to explain it. And I know you're going to show that in the next section, but just
Mhm.
a quick answer, if you would. Naomi and others asked, how do you know where to put the hoop when you have to switch to the next area?
So I use a printed template for that exact thing. And that's actually coming up in this next section. I'm going to show you under my live camera. But having a template that is printed out or either stitched out, you could actually stitch one if you'd like, but I prefer to print them. I can place that down on my quilt, and that shows me exactly where I want my next design to stitch. And it also gives me the perfect placement for my hoop. Then I know my design is in the right spot.
Right. And of course, I think, Ashley, the benefit to printing is it would help you get that alignment straight, because
Right.
you don't have those crosshairs and alignment lines on your stitch out, even though in a pinch you could do it that way. Absolutely. And the other question we had, which is from Loretta. She asked, will the standard hoop guard work with the magnetic hoop? Now, I just bring that up. And of course, I mean, some of these people don't know what a hoop guard is yet. But, a hoop guard keeps your fabric from falling under the needle. But she just is curious. And I'm afraid I'll lose that question if I don't answer it now.
Yeah, sure. So the standard hoop guards are hoop guards that work with your standard hoops, your traditional hoop that has that inner ring that we recess into the outer ring. So those hoop guards will only work with your standard hoop because they are meant to be in between those rings. They're flexible and they do not stay well in your snap hoop monster. So the metal hoop guard for your snap hoop monster was specifically designed. It magnetizes to your metal to make sure it stays in place when you're doing your hooping. So you want to use the metal hoop guard for your snap hoops, and you want to use those flexible hoop guards for your standard hoops.
Okay,
And
that's great.
interchange.
And I think that oh wow, there's somebody here from Scotland. Isn't that wild? So
Nice.
so many people, Ashley, talking about their snap hoops. And of course, if anyone has questions about what snap hoop might work with their machine, I'll try to help you pick out the exact product that's going to work for your machine. So in the meantime, you can ask your questions in chat. And Ashley, let's get back to your lesson.
All right, sounds great. So, okay, guys, let's talk about choosing those quilting designs and the different types of designs that are available. So when we're quilting on our embroidery machine, we are using an embroidery file. So these are in the file formats for our embroidery machines that we are most used to seeing. These designs, unlike our fill and our satin stitches, these are only run stitch designs that we will be stitching to form our quilting. So now there are different types of quilting designs, and the most common are actually connected point to point to give you that continuous line look, when in fact it's 4 different quilting designs in this instance here. So now that point-to-point connecting, I'm going to show you live under my camera in just a bit so you can see exactly how we do that. And hang on one second here. My screen is just thinking and not flipping. So it may be locked up here, so it'll come back. But so while it's thinking and trying to figure out what it's doing, so the different types of designs. So there are some designs that have a point on either side that we do connect. And there are some that actually don't, that you just nest near one another. And so we're going to see both of those examples and also how to connect each one. So we're actually going to have to stop this and redo it, it looks like. And so while that's doing its thing there, I'm actually going to head over here and let's talk about the software program that I'm going to share with you while it's doing rebooting for us. So I'm going to show you how to connect these designs under the camera here in just a bit. And I love how it didn't even remember what PowerPoint I was on. That's just rude, isn't it? And so we'll get that back up. And then, so let me start that really quickly before we go on so it can be working its magic and booting up, and then we'll see that. So we, to connect these different types of designs, we actually use our template, the printed template that you see here on the screen, and that's actually what also shows me where to place my hoop. And so I wanted to show you the types of designs first, so hopefully this will connect up and do act like it's supposed to here. And then we'll be able to see. So, but the printed template, when you print a template, it actually does print with this crosshair that we see here, which is perfect for lining up your design. That's going to help you get it straight in the hoop, and also be able to make sure that you're straight and lined up. So let me just get back ahead to the section that we were in before, and hopefully this is good to go. So we already talked about the hoops, and we talked about the weightless quilter, and here we are back at our design. So here we go. Okay, so the designs and connecting them, and also for the size. So thank you for your patience. So sometimes technology is not our friend. So this design that you see here has the point on either side that we're connecting. But I also wanted to show you, look how many times it's going to take me to repeat this design to get this quilt done. So this is a 56-inch by 75-inch example, and that little red design there is a 6x10 design. So it's going to take me quite a few hoopings to get this quilted. But don't let that scare you. These designs stitch really quickly because they're all run stitches. Then once you're all done, you have them all connected, it will look gorgeous. So look at these examples of that happy flower design, how great it looks. So, and it's so rewarding to do your quilts in this manner on your embroidery machine, trust me. Now the Amelie Scott design. So do we have anybody out there that's already using the Amelie Scott design? So tell us in the chat. So her designs actually are point-to-point connection. So there's a start and a stop point on either side of the design. And in her design, she actually gives you an A design and a B design. It gives you some variation in the quilting, as you can see in my example here to the right, so that you're not using the same design over and over. Now, because she's giving you two different designs, she does recommend quilting in columns. That'll make sure that you're not having to load the A design and then immediately do the B design. So if you'll just quilt a column of the A and a column of the B and a column of the A, you don't have to reload that opposite design so often. And I'm actually going to show you how to link those up under the camera here in a bit. Now, this type of design is a closed design. It starts and stops in the same point, but it still is great for your edge-to-edge quilting. So look at my example over there. It's a 30x30 with a 10x10 design. These designs don't actually connect, but as you can see, they still look like that continuous line quilting. So your eye is not drawn to a specific point. We can see all of our lines going everywhere. So it still looks like continuous line. Now, hoop size, don't let that scare you either if you don't have a large hoop. This is the same example with a 6x6 design versus the 10-inch design. So you can accomplish this with a smaller hoop. And this example, this is actually another great project to start with. So this is a 20x20 throw pillow. We love to do our quilted throw pillows. This is a closed design also. So this has a start and stop point in the same location, and the designs are nested together. So this comes from our flower box quilt book, which is one of the items below the presentation if you like this little meandering design here. The flower box quilt book also gives you a half design. When you get to the edge of your quilt and you're almost ready to run off the edge, you want to make sure that you either continue to stitch to fill in that blank spot with your full design. But if you do have access to a partial or a half design, it makes it easier because you don't have to stitch as much off of the edge of your fabric. Now, another form of nested designs or diamond-shaped designs, like you can see here, evenly spaced and offset, really gives you a nice overall quilting look. So take a look at that. Still looks great, still quilted on an embroidery machine. So those are just some different options in choosing your design. This is another one of the diamond type designs, and this is actually stitched on one of our cheater quilts. So if you like the idea of the cheater quilt, the circus quilt, we also have the Ohio Star below and this diamond quilt that you can use for practice. Now let's talk about the design layout of our quilt tops. So we use our My Quilt Planner software program to help us with this. So this is a very easy program to use. It's going to do all of the quilt math for you to figure out how many hoopings it's going to take, the design size that you need, and also you can see visually what your quilting is going to look like. So this program installs on your computer and allows you to plan your quilting design layout. It has built-in designs and also is able to print full-size templates, which we just talked about how helpful those are. So with the My Quilt Planner program, you actually are going to enter your information about your quilt top that you're ready to piece. This program is not going to help you plan the piecing. It's helping plan the quilting design layout. So when you color code your quilt, you usually are going to place the colors where you want the design to repeat. So when you put it in one of those, the cream color cells there, it'll repeat in all of them. When you put the design in the blue, it'll repeat in all the blue. You can even make sure that these designs are going to fit perfectly in the interior and avoid your border. So we're going to see that example here live in just a second. So planning with My Quilt Planner makes it really easy, and it's visual as well. So I'm such a visual person. I love to be able to see exactly what to expect without having to do any guesswork. So now I'm inside of my embroidery tool shed. Now this program here houses My Quilt Planner. So all my features of My Quilt Planner are inside of my tool shed. So to start using My Quilt Planner, I'm going to click to choose this icon here and build my quilt. So this example just needs to answer all the questions. So when you're ready to build your quilt, just answer all of these questions as it's asking them. So the size of your quilt, enter that information, the size of your block. If you have sashing, if you don't, then just put a 0. And then if you have a border, enter that measurement here. And as you can see to the right, it's actually building my virtual quilt for me. So now what I want to do is color code the quilt. So I'm going to choose one of the colors from this option here and click to fill this with color. So you want to put the same color anywhere you want to use the same design. So let's say the interior here, we want to use the same design because we want it to be an edge-to-edge type quilting. Now let's choose a different color for our border designs because our border design is more narrow. So we do want it to be a different design. And our top and bottom border, we'll need to rotate it. So that'll be a different color. And lastly, the cornerstones. Once we've done that, I'm going to just make my design show up darker here and then also lighten up the quilt. So that just makes it easier to put our designs on. So then I'm going to say, okay, it'll add that to my screen. And now you just need to choose the design that you want to use to audition for your quilt. So built into the software, the 100 different quilting designs are in the little gift box icon. We have these 4 different categories to kind of get you started with your quilting options. So when you see one you like, you just simply choose that design. And this is only one design on the screen, but when I place it in any of these blue squares, it auto previews for me what it's going to look like. And then with the click of a button, one click, it will resize that design so that it fills that area. So now what I've just done is I've actually created a design that is perfectly sized to be stitched 3 times in the interior of my quilt. And it will end right at the edge of my border here. So now, of course, if you don't like the design that you chose, just remove it and maybe go back and choose a different one. Let's see what this one looks like. And again, I'm going to do my fit to sell. And you can see what the all over quilting is going to look like. So let's grab one for our border. So I'm going to go and choose from our rectangle designs here. So I'm going to place this one in one of my borders, have it fit to that size, and you can see it filled all my blue cells. And then I'm actually going to copy this one, paste it, and then rotate it for my left and right border. And fit to cell. So then let's grab one more for our cornerstones and we'll talk about saving. So I'm going to choose this one and put that in our cornerstones and fit to cell. So now we've planned the quilting on our quilt. I can see visually that B2 would be a great place to start because that's in the center of my quilt. So if I fold it in half both lengthwise and crosswise, I could mark that center fold and place my template there. Okay, so to save the quilt, with one click of the export quilt option, it will save each of the designs for us. So I'm going to call this our test 2 quilt. And I actually already have test 2, so let's do test 3. And then you're going to choose the format for your embroidery machine. So take a look at this. We have all the formats for all of the home embroidery machines, commercial formats, and even long arm formats. So you can save to any of these types of formats on the My Quilt Planner software. So you're going to choose the format for your embroidery machine and say save. It will open up the page and you can see that it has saved each of those designs for me individually, which is exactly what I need to take to my embroidery machine. They're already in the format. I'll just put them on the USB stick and I'm ready to take to my machine and get quilting. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is our printed template, because that's what I use to make sure I know exactly where to place my hoop. So to print a template, you want to copy your design and then paste it on a blank workspace. So with the design on a page by itself, if I click the print option, it will print my design for me actual size. So it gives me this crosshair, and I can tile these 2 pages together on that center crosshair. And when I do that, I will have one full-size template to help me with my placement. So printing templates are something that we use all the time. So, and I'll show you that under the camera here in a moment. Okay, so now that we've seen the entire process, let's look at one more scenario. So I'm going to start a new page here, and I'm going to use our quilt setup to answer my question. So we're going to tell it our quilt size for this scenario. And I'm going to use this scenario for edge-to-edge quilting where we don't care if we've got a border or sashing. We're going to use the same design and go all over. So in this instance, I'm going to put 0 for the border and the sashing. But instead of a block size, I'm actually going to put in a number that represents my hoop size. So let's say you want to quilt with your 8x12 hoop. I would take 1 inch away from that just to give you some wiggle room, and I would put 7x11. Now, once I've done that, each one of these cells represents my hoop size, but I'm not quite to the edge of my quilt here. So this dash line represents the size of my quilt. And I will need to adjust my hoop size to make sure I fill it up all the way. So when you enter your block size, the math always works out because, well, you've got a quilt top to prove it. But when we're using our hoop size, we sometimes have to increase our numbers slightly. So you can see here a 0.2 makes it jump right to the edge there. And for the height, you can see the 0.2 almost got me there. So if I put a 0.25, it will fill up my quilt. So now let's color the quilt. If we're doing edge to edge, we usually want the same color everywhere. And I'm just going to darken up. This is the design preview, and lighten up the color so we can see what's going on. And then for the hooping sequence, I'm going to choose edge to edge. That's going to tell us exactly where to start and where to go for our second, third, and so forth on hooping. So I'm going to say OK. Now for edge to edge, I'm going to start with one of the built-in designs, and it works the same way. Choose the design that you are interested in using. This one I'm going to rotate it around so it's the same direction of our hoop, and then fill the cell. And so here's my quilting if I want to do all over quilting edge to edge. But say you want to use the Amelie Scott designs, which has an A and a B design. So we need to be able to bring in two different designs. So if I go back into my settings, I can just choose a different color and color every other column a different color. And say OK. And now I will import my Amelie Scott design. So I'm going to go File and Merge to bring in a design that is not built into the software, and then locate that design on my computer. So my designs are stored under my C-Dime Designs folder. And then I've got a quilting folder here with my Amelie Scott design. So Amelie Scott gives you three different sizes, a 5x9, 6x11, and a 7x13. And I'm going to choose the size closest to what I was working with, which would be the 6x11. Choose your machine format and then locate the design you want to use. So if we scroll down here and see which design we want to work with, there's lots of fun choices. Let's do, oh, I love this chili pepper. Look at this, isn't that cute? So let's choose the chili pepper design and the lime. Place it in one of your cells. Choose that fit to cell, and you can see how it repeats in each of my blue squares. And then let's choose the B design. So File, Merge, and then let's go get that cute little chili pepper B design. So it's salsa, I think. So we've got tomatoes and the lime and the peppers. And then I'm going to say fit to cell. So now we've created our layout. So now let's save it again. So I'm going to choose my export quilt option. And for this one, we're going to do our test quilt again. So this one, I'm going to call this our edge to edge test and say our machine format. So you choose your machine format and then click save. And when it opens up, I want to show you the PDF file that you get with this combination. So here I've got my EXP files and this PDF. So take a look at this PDF that you get when you save. This is going to show you the layout of your quilt, as you see here. But then page 2 shows you in what order to do your hooping. So it says to start here at this green dot, which is C2. And then move to C1, C3, and C4. And then you're going to go up to D2, D1, D3, so forth and so on until the first half of your quilt that's under the needle is quilted. Then you're going to flip your quilt around upside down until so that you have the unquilted half under your needle, and do the same exact method. Start here in B3, quilt this column, and then go over to A3 to quilt this column. So this PDF can help you decide where to start and where to go next. So it is like your roadmap. So now that is my quilt planner. I'm a visual person, so I love being able to look right at my layout. I can see exactly right here that I have 5 hoopings across, 4 down. So this quilt's going to take me 20 hoopings to complete with this particular size hoop and design. So I love that. I love that I can see and plan and tell and also print my templates. So now let me show you how to use those templates. So I'm going to head over here to my camera. So now this example here, I already have printed. It is larger than 1 sheet of paper. So I had to tile the 2 together on that center line. So now I have 1 full template that is the same size as my stitch design, and I have these nice crosshairs to help me get everything lined up. Okay, so now let's see how to use these. So here in this example, I'm going to start with your free design. So I already have my templates printed, and we're going to use this little strip here also to give you a tip. And I've got my design partially stitched. So this represents my quilt top. And notice all this extra batting. So this is really important to have extra batting all the way around your quilt. So when you get to the edge, you have something for your hoop to attach onto. So now we're ready to do our next quilting location. We've quilted 4 of these designs. So I'm going to take my printed template, okay, and see my template. You can see that it's the same size as my design. So I'm going to place my template where I want the next design to stitch. And because it's actual size, that shows me exactly where to place my hoop. Now the crosshair can also help me make sure that I'm straight in the hoop and get everything nice and lined up. Now notice right here, I'm hanging off the edge of my quilt top, but because I have this extra batting, it's acting as a leader fabric for me so that I can fill the hoop with fabric and don't have this edge just dangling. It's going to make sure I get the best stitch out. So now this template, I want to center my design over that intersection, and then I can remove this and stitch. So let's see that one more time. So now this is your design that comes with your event here for free, your nautical design. Now your design's bigger. I shrank this one down to show under the camera. But notice I can nest this because this one doesn't connect point to point. I nest my template next to the previously stitched design, and then I know exactly where to place my hoop. And then I can center my needle position there with that design on my screen to make sure it's in the right location. You can always do your trace feature on your machine to check that you are perfectly straight. You're also going to use the seams on your quilt with this crosshair to make sure you're lined up nicely. And then, of course, make sure that you center the needle, remove the template before you start to stitch. Okay, now let's look at lining up those designs point to point. So here is an example with the Amelie Scott design. So you can see I've already got one column stitched and I'm ready to do the B design of the column 2. So I've got my template that I've already printed, and I'm going to connect my 2 points with my stitch design and my template. And because this template is actual size, it allows me to be able to put my hoop in the right location. Okay, so let me move that up just a little bit here. And I can make sure that I'm centered with those crosshair. I'm going to load my B design, center my needle over that intersection, and then remove my template when I am ready to stitch. So then after I've stitched this, I'm ready to move on to the next column. So make sure you load the A design, get your A template, connect the stitch design to the point on your template. And since this is actual size, I know exactly where to place my hoop. And it also helps me get everything lined up nice and straight. Now, this is a good example here, and I've got a couple of tips for you. So notice that my design is actually going to stitch just slightly off of the edge of my quilt top, which is perfectly fine because we're going to trim this up. If you are using My Quilt Planner, your design will be resized, and so you likely won't have it stitching off the edge. If you do, it'll be very slightly. But if your design stitches off the edge, just make sure that you hold down your fabric with something like this, either a skewer or a chopstick, just something other than your finger, to make sure that your foot travels on and off of your quilt top and doesn't get caught underneath your quilt top. That would be a disaster and possibly ruin that edge of your quilt. So hold down the edge there, make sure that it travels off and on nicely. And if you don't like the idea of putting something in the hoop when it's stitching, another tip is to use a water-soluble adhesive stabilizer. So below the presentation, we have our Sew and Wash stabilizer. This is a stabilizer that is 100% dissolvable, and it is adhesive. It has this release paper, and it's adhesive on the back. So what I do with that is I cut thin strips, and I place it down along the edge. If you are worried about forgetting, you can just cut thin strips of that water-soluble adhesive stabilizer. That's our exquisite Sew and Wash. And then place this along the edge. So of your quilt top, if you place this right on the edge and onto the batting, smooth it all out. When your embroidery foot travels off, it doesn't risk getting caught underneath. So that stabilizer is going to keep that from happening. Now, once you're all done, you would trim away the excess batting. So most of that stabilizer would be cut away. And that little part that remains, once you launder your quilt, it will completely dissolve. So that's just a tip for making sure that you don't have a mishap there on the edge of your quilt. Okay, so now then one more thing I want to share with you on My Quilt Planner. is the fact that you can actually import images into the software. So if you take a photograph of your actual quilt top that you're ready to quilt, you can import that image and do your designing right on your picture. So you can plan and know what your design is going to look like with your actual quilt top. So by doing that, you can also audition thread colors by changing the preview and see which thread choice you like the best. So I love this. Like I said before, I'm a visual person, so I love if I can see it before I actually have to make that choice. So now here's another example, same quilt, but just a different design. And look at that, you get a totally different look. And this quilt was actually quilted with our variegated thread. So this is our medley variegated. So remember I said you can quilt with any thread you can run in your embroidery machine, and variegated embroidery thread is a great choice. Look at the beautiful color change and how it just blends so nicely with our quilt top. It really adds an additional detail that I love. So quilting with variegated thread is a lot of fun. So now we have 3 different bundles here that I want to share with you, and then we're going to get to any questions that you might have. So we have the Ultimate Quilt Bundle, which includes the Weightless Quilter and also the My Quilt Planner software program. So that together, that's in the Ultimate Quilt Bundle, but we also throw in some free goodies for you. So we throw in our micro font collection. This is a really nice font collection for doing labels, quilt labels. And when you're stitching those tiny little fonts, you want to make sure that you are using a 60 weight thread. So we have included our Fine Line by Exquisite, which is a 60 weight thread, perfect for those micro fonts. Now, quilting with your embroidery machine, if you are wondering what type of needle to use, we recommend a sharp point embroidery needle. So we've included our sharp point embroidery sampler pack in this bundle as well. Not to mention, you're going to get free education with the software. You are going to get a 30-minute private tutoring session from myself or another one of our education team members. You'll be able to choose which educator teaches your lesson. And you also are going to get 4 PDF tutorials as well. These are written tutorials with images for you to be able to step through different quilt scenarios to learn your software. So that's the Ultimate Quilt Bundle. It's normally over $1,100 and it is $699.99 for the event. So that's available below. Now I know I went through that quickly, but don't forget you can click the View Product button to see the details of what's in each of the bundles, but you can also review this presentation for the next 48 hours too if you want to get right back to this location. Now the next bundle is the Professional Quilt Bundle. Now it includes the My Quilt Planner software program and all of those free goodies from the others. So the micro fonts, the Fine Line 60 weight thread by Exquisite, the embroidery sharp needles, and the free education. So this bundle includes the same items as the Ultimate minus the weightless quilter. So it's normally over $700 and it's $439.99 for the event. So that's the Professional Quilt Bundle, also available below the presentation. And the last one is just for those of you that want the software. It is the Quilt Planner all by itself. The Quilt Planner alone is $229.99, and we have thrown in the free education to learn your Quilt Planner software. So that is the Quilt Planner Bundle, also available below the presentation. So now before we go on to the next section, Deborah, do we have any questions or comments that we need to address?
Yes, we do. One viewer, Denise, says, what if your quilt design isn't square blocks like diamond shaped on point or hexagonal? I know you showed that nesting technique, right? Is that what you would suggest?
Yes, if they are like designs that are more like diamond shaped, then yes. Now, when planning those diamond shaped, when we head back over, I'll show you. You can actually do that in My Quilt Planner as well. If you put one of those designs over the intersection, it will still repeat for you. And that will also help you figure out the markings. Now, when we're doing those diamond shaped designs, I usually put more marks on my quilt. If I'm doing the edge to edge, I usually mark the center, both vertical and horizontal. But if I'm doing those designs where I'm placing more of them and offset, I usually draw more lines so I know exactly where to land that diamond shaped design.
Okay, and Linda wants to know, what is the largest square that you can make? And I think she means in planner.
You can actually make it as large as you like. So I know some people use it designing their bench pillow, so it may be 20 inches long. But even though you can put any size square in My Quilt Planner, you have to remember that the design that you're using for quilting has to fit in your hoop. So if you have a 12-inch block, but you don't have a 12-inch square hoop, which I know you don't because nobody does. If they did, I would have it too, Deborah, right? And
Right.
so you want to break your block up into, say, a 6 by 12 because you could do that in your hoop. But you need to be able to separate your design out. Even though your block may be bigger, you got to think it's got to fit in your hoop.
Well, that kind of leads into another question, which is from another viewer who asked, which is better to use or to type in, the hoop size or the block size?
I would say it depends on what type of quilting you're going for. So for if you put in your block size, then each of those quilting designs are going to land in each block because you're making the design per block. If you're doing that edge to edge quilting, then I don't want it to land in every block. I want it to look like, it just goes all over regardless of block size. And in that case, that's when I use something that resembles my hoop size. And I just use an example there. If you've got a larger hoop or a smaller hoop, you can put in different dimensions there that represent your hoop size.
Okay, and then another viewer asked if you, and I know you can because you brought in Amelie Scott designs,
Yeah.
if you can use designs from another source in Quilt Planner.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's a stitch file format, we read and write to all formats for all popular machine brands, commercial and home machines. So yeah, as long as you can read it, you can bring it in and use it in your design. And that also goes for, because we read those long arm formats, I'll give everybody a little tip here. If you don't have a long arm, which I do not, I can still purchase long arm quilting designs, use them in my quilt planner, and then when I export it to save it, I actually export it as my machine format. So I'm basically converting a long arm quilting file to my embroidery machine format when I do that. And that's something I do regularly. It gives me
Well,
more options of
that's pretty
designs.
slick trick. I love that. And in speaking of slick tricks, we're getting some comments on how much people enjoy the presentation. Eileen says, "This is a great presentation. You're making this easier than me trying to figure it out alone." So thank you, Eileen, for that comment. And also, I know you're going to demonstrate later, but we've had two comments and questions about basting. So I know you've got a great tip to show them. So stay tuned to see that basting tip, and let's get back to your lesson.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. So, okay, guys. So, yes, basting is coming up. And so let me show you the items that are in the bundle. Let me give you a little closer up look because these are also available individually. But yes, basting is coming up, our tips on that. And then in just a moment, I'll show you positioning those designs in my quilt planner that are diamond shape as well. So with the Ultimate and the Professional bundle, it includes this micro font collection, but you can purchase it separately. If you already have a software program that does not have a micro font, this is a nice addition. This installs on your computer inside of our free embroidery tool shed, and you can type out whatever you need to say in this micro font. So these little tiny fonts here are perfect for not just your quilt labels, but recipe towels, baby items. Sometimes we need small text for a left chest logo. Stitch in relation to that coin. Isn't that awesome? Now, to make sure that these stitch out as nicely as they do, they have been specifically digitized to be this small. So our standard fonts have lots of overlapping areas to make sure it's nice and filled in, but these miniature fonts cannot handle the overlapping areas because they are so tiny and the thread gets bulked up in those areas and could possibly cause thread breaks. So they've been specifically digitized so they stitch this nicely. So trying to shrink down your regular fonts is not always the best choice. So this is a design pack that is available separate. Again, it's standalone, so you don't need anything additional to make it work. It installs inside of our free embroidery tool shed, so you can type out those fonts for the text that you need. Now, when you are stitching with a micro font, you want to use a thinner weight thread. So we've got our Fine Line by Exquisite for that purpose. And this is also one of those items that's in the Ultimate and the Professional bundle. So this is 15 different colors in this collection and 1,500 meter spools. It is polyester embroidery thread. And you can use it for quilting if you'd like, because it's 60 weight, it's thinner, and it gives a very subtle effect of the quilting design on your quilt. And now the needle sampler pack. This is also included in the bundle of the Ultimate and the Professional, but you can purchase these separately. This is our recommended needle for quilting. You want to use a sharp point embroidery needle. You're trying to quilt or embroider through 3 layers, so you want to make sure that you've got that sharp point embroidery needle. This sampler pack has 100 needles for $35.99. They are flat shank, so if you're using a flat shank needle, this will work in your embroidery machine. So we have the sizes you see listed here, all in this one sampler pack. So that is also available below. Now, I haven't mentioned in a bit, don't forget your free ship code, guys. If you're ordering today, free shipping to any U.S. address with the free ship code HOT. So make sure you type that all as one word, no spaces between those 2 items. So now the design specials that are coming up. So we have lots of design specials. If you don't already have some designs, I'll show you those. But let me head back over to the software quickly and show you what I mean about that, that diamond shape design here. So now let me go and grab a design that I know will work. I know there's one actually in the book that I'm about to talk about is our Quilt with an Embroidery Machine and 8 Easy Lessons book. And in that book, there are some designs in the back. And so the designs that come with it has a great design for exactly what we're about to talk about. So it's this loopy design here. Oh, and I need to choose. So here, this is the design. So these diamond shaped designs. So let me go back and color this all one color because we're going to have the same design all over. So I'm going to go back and then just make sure I've got all the same colors. So look at this. Super easy. Click OK. And now we've got our one design. Now watch what happens. So if I put it in this block, and this one, I may not want it to fill the block because I want a little bit of space. So instead of doing the fill, I'm actually just going to center it. And then that gives me a little extra space here. And then I'm going to copy this design and paste it and put that right over the intersection there. Look at that. And you can see how it repeats for me. So now the designs that are over here on the edge, you could stitch another design that is a whole design and it stitches off of the edge. But if you are purchasing this book, the Quilt with an Embroidery Machine book, we actually give you half designs for this purpose. So this design here, you would stitch in this corner here so you don't have to stitch off the edge of the fabric. So, so that's how you could do a design. Now, when I'm doing these diamond designs, I actually mark all these lines. I measure. These are certain size cells, so I know exactly how much to measure and mark. But that allows me to know exactly where to place my design. So hopefully that helps with figuring out that design. Okay, so now let's talk about those design specials. So the Quilt with an Embroidery Machine book, if you are the type of person that likes to have a written material on what you're learning. So this book is actually the written instructions for everything that we're talking about today. And it also has free designs as well as free projects. So it gives you the instructions for creating several different projects like this throw pillow and some table runners. Can never have too many table runners. And so this is a PDF book. So it is a digital book that you will get a link to download once you purchase. So watch in your email for a second email after your receipt to download your items. Now this one of my absolute favorite because it is so unique. Look at those designs. So those 4 designs, when placed together, create a really unique effect of your quilting. And look at it on this quilt. I know it's hard to see on that tone on tone, but take a look at this design here. Isn't that gorgeous? So those 4 designs nest together, and the instructions in there tell you how to do it, and you get this effect of that stream of flowers. Man, it is so unique. No one would ever think that you actually could accomplish that on your embroidery machine. So I absolutely love it. So this design collection, not only does it give you the 4 main body designs and the border designs, but you also get what we refer to as filler designs. So this means if you didn't get your design landed perfectly in place and you've got a little bit of gap in your quilting, you can use those filler designs to just fill in so it doesn't look like you missed anything. So it also gives you the instructions for creating that whole cloth quilt you see there on the front. A very fun project, very intricate, and oh my gosh, is it rewarding once you are all done. So that's $35.99. This is a standalone design collection and project. You do not need anything else to make it work, and it includes designs with all machine formats as well as 4 hoops, 5x7, 7x12, and 8x12. So you can even accomplish that in a 5x7 hoop. So the next thing I want to share with you is kind of a reiteration about those templates. So let's see some images that maybe will reiterate what we're talking about. So remember, we printed our templates and we use those to connect our points. That actual size template not only allows us to place it where we want it to stitch, but it also helps us know exactly where to put our hoop. The crosshair of our template can help us make sure that we are straight in the hoop. Using that crosshair to make sure you're straight on your seams is another great way to make sure that you've got your design placed exactly where you need it to be. Now, I printed on our print and stick target paper. Deborah and I talked about this briefly, about printing on this template paper is nice because then it sticks to your quilt. While you are hooping, you don't want your template to be moving around because you're trying to get it all lined up. So printing on this adhesive template paper makes it much easier to place your design. It stays right where you put it. So now once you print it, you want to make sure that you trim away any of the excess around your design. That just makes it so much easier for placing on your quilt. You can see here that we can place that template right on our quilt top, and because it's slightly translucent, I can see through the template to make sure that it's placed exactly where I need it. Once it's placed, again, just to reiterate, it is placing your hoop around that template. You know exactly that your hoop's going to be in the right spot. And then you're going to be at the embroidery machine and centering your design over that intersection of the template there. Once you've done that, peel off that template. Do not stitch through that template. You will not be a happy camper for sure. And now, for those of you that want to pull your bobbin thread up after you have your design in position, you want to advance to the first stitch and then draw your bobbin to the top of your quilt sandwich. And you can do that by lowering your hand wheel to take that one stitch, and when it comes up, pull your top thread, or by your needle down button will also make that happen. So once you've done that, hang on to those 2 thread tails. When it starts stitching, it'll do that motion of tying the knot, but you won't see that knot on the back of your quilt. And this example, once you're done with that stitching and you're ready to move to the next location, this is the example of our hoop lifted over the head of our machine. You can see this is why we love quilting with our Snap Hoop Monster. We never have to leave the embroidery machine to get to the next location. Now on to that quilt sandwich example. So just like you guys said, so we have talked about nearly everything we need to know, I think. So we've talked about the rehooping or the repositioning of your hoop to get your design stitch. How do we know where to place our hoop and how do we get our design connected? So we've talked about that. We've also talked about managing the weight of the quilt, and that if you're using a lap size or larger, make sure that you've got some system to manage the weight of the quilt. But you do need a quilt sandwich. So, and we do recommend basting it. So let me show you how we baste a large quilt in a small space. So in this example, we're showing you how to baste using 2 pool noodles. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your pull noodle and your quilt top, and you're going to start by pinning your quilt top right into the noodle and roll the quilt top onto the pull noodle with the right sides up. Now, by doing that with the right sides up, you're going to make sure it's in the right orientation for unrolling with our backing fabric. If you need a pull noodle longer for your quilt top, just tape a couple of them together. It's perfectly fine. And then you're going to do the same thing with your backing, only it needs to be right sides down so that when you unroll it, as you see here, you've got the quilt starting in the right orientation. So then you're going to put your batting over the backing fabric, making sure that everything's nice and smooth. Now, the nice thing about this method, guys, is you're working with a small section of your quilt. Even though here you can see that we have a small piece of fabric that we're simulating this with, if you had even just the width of your quilt, but you weren't having to deal with the length of it, you're working with a small section at once. So then you're going to grab your noodle with your quilt top and you're going to place that over the batting, make sure that everything's lined up nicely. And then you're going to baste your 3 layers. Now, we do recommend basting. It definitely makes a difference for your quilt layers to hold in that position while you're moving the quilt around in the hoop. Now, we use basting pins. That's our preferred method of basting. If you would prefer to use a different basting method, certainly give it a try. We baste about a hand's width apart, and the nice thing about these basting pins are they are easy to remove right at the embroidery machine. We don't have to take the hoop off to remove our basting pins. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing a method. So about a hand's width apart, just keep going till it's basted completely. Super easy, and I feel like we've covered almost everything. If there are any questions, make sure you're asking. We're going to do one more Q&A before we are done. But now let's talk about those Amelie Scott design bundles. So Amelie Scott is a huge name in the edge-to-edge quilting industry, so I want to share these bundles with you. So they've allowed us to offer these at a special price. So this first bundle is Christine's Edge-to-Edge Favorites, which includes her Edge-to-Edge book, and it has 10 free designs. She also gives you in this pack the 3 expansion packs that you see here. These are 3 different design collections. 4 miniature designs, which are great for your table runners and also placemats. And you're even going to get 3 bonus quilt patterns. So once you get those quilt patterns pieced, you will have the choice of 44 different designs. So this collection normally $138 if you bought them individually, and we are able to offer it to you guys for $95. Thanks to Amelie Scott Designs for coordinating and collaborating with us. So here's a close-up of what's included in this bundle so that you can see the designs closer to see if you like what you see. So we have the 10 designs that come with her book. This is the Christine's Edge-to-Edge Favorites. It includes expansion pack 2, which includes these designs here. Look at those adorable cats with the little yarn ball. I absolutely love that. We also have expansion pack 5 in this bundle, my personal favorite with those 2 quilting and sewing motifs. I love those. And we have the expansion pack 11 with the cute little Scotty dogs in the bones. So adorable. 4 miniature designs and these 3 quilt patterns. Now, all of that, $95. That bundle is available below the presentation. Now, I know that went quickly, but don't forget, you can click the View Product button to see these details, but you can also rewatch this presentation for the next 48 hours and fast forward right to this point. So the next bundle is the Expansion Pack Plus. It includes 6 different design collections with 10 designs each, 4 miniatures, which are different than the previous bundle, no overlapping, and 3 bonus quilt patterns. So this bundle, a total of 64 different designs, $162 normally, but $120 for the event, thanks to that collaboration with Amelie Scott Designs. These are the close-up of the designs that are included in this bundle. So it has expansion pack 7 and 8. expansion pack 9 and 10, expansion pack 12 and 13, these 4 miniature designs, 5x7, perfect for your table runners, and these 3 bonus quilt patterns. All of that in the bundle below the presentation, the expansion pack plus, for $120. And the last one I have here is the Big File Small Project bundle. So this one includes 3 of the expansion pack design collections and 2 project CDs with the placemats. So you're going to get the Jumbo Pack 1, Jumbo Pack 2, and the Jumbo Packs, guys, are really large designs. So you can see here in this image, it lists the file. She gives you 3 sizes, but these are the really large ones for the large hoops that are out there. Expansion Pack 14, and also the Seasonal Swirl placemats. This is a project instructions to create the placemats, the embroidery designs, and the quilting designs, and how to get that all done. We also have the Seasonal Placemats 2 included in the bundle, which gives you the instructions, the quilting designs, and the cute little applique designs as well. So that's the Big File Small Project bundle for $88, normally $110. And so the last thing I wanted to share with you is a new addition to our Edge to Edge event is our Color Play thread kit. So do we have any people out there that are thread junkies? I am definitely one of them. I love thread as much as I love fabric. So this kit is very unique. You guys are going to love this. So these are a 5 spool thread kit that includes 1 of our variegated thread from our medley collection, and it has the 4 coordinating colors that actually make up that variegated color. So there are 3 different collections. They are $18.68 each. And here's a close-up. So here is the Paris collection. You can see it includes that amber glow medley variegated thread and the 4 threads that are actually in that variegated. So if you are trying to find a coordinating thread, you know these are going to match because it's the exact color that's in the variegated design. So we have the Madison collection that includes the pansy patch variegated and the 4 coordinated colors. And I just love it. That's my favorite. I love those deep blues and purples. And we have the Carnival thread, medley thread in the Rio collection, and it's 4 coordinating colors as well. So those are just some fun thread kits to get you some matching variegated with your regular embroidery colors. This is regular embroidery thread in each of these sets. We're talking 40 weight polyester, can be used for your regular embroidery projects or your quilting if you'd like. So now, Deborah, that's all I have. What do we need to talk about before we go? So what's going on over there in the chat?
A lot. You know, there's a lot. One viewer asked, do you recommend the edge-to-edge technique for a T-shirt quilt?
Oh, yeah, you can do that. So that's really, again, a personal preference. But, yeah, I think it would be a great one for a T-shirt quilt. Yeah.
Right. And, of course, a lot of comments about the pool noodles. Mandela Henson says she's been using them for years. Phyllis says pool noodles genius. Jan says wonderful information and lots of tips. Beth says she's used the pool noodle technique twice. It really works well. So that's all good stuff. So that's all the questions we have. And I think that you did a fantastic job of breaking down this technique. And so many people are feeling confident about doing it. And a lot of people already have that snap hoop, but many, many more are checking them out in the shopping pane. So really a great class. And, you know, of course, we want to thank Oh My Crafty Supplies for hosting us today. And thank you you very much for sharing all your knowledge and experience, because that's the way that we all learn, is from each other. And it's a wonderful way to get together virtually and do that. So thanks for sharing your expertise, Ashley. Thanks for hosting Oh My Crafty Supplies, Matt and Tisha and all the gang. And we appreciate it. So until we have another event hosted by Oh My Crafty Supplies and Dime, we're going to say thanks for watching and bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.